let's begin our journey through Pittsburgh, a city that rests quietly at the meeting place of three rivers. The Allegheny River flows down from the northeast, carrying with it the memories of forests and mountains. The Monongahela River curves up from the south, bringing the stories of valleys and coal country. And where these two rivers meet, they form the Ohio River, a river that will eventually find its way, slowly and surely, all the way to the Mississippi and then to the Gulf of Mexico. But here, right here, at this confluence, is where Pittsburgh was born. Three rivers coming together, three waterways that have shaped everything about this place. The way people moved, the way industries grew, the way neighborhoods formed along the banks. You can stand at the point where they meet and watch the water merge, endlessly flowing, always moving forward. Long before it was called Pittsburgh, this land had another name. The Seneca people knew it as Jaodioga, a word that speaks to the place itself, though its exact meaning has been discussed and pondered by historians over many years. The Seneca, part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, understood these rivers, these hills, this land in ways that went back generations. They traveled these waterways, they hunted in these forests, they knew the patterns of the seasons here. When European settlers arrived, they found a landscape already known, already named, already home to people who had lived here long before any fort or city took shape. That history remains, woven into the land itself, even as the city grew and changed and became what it is today. Pittsburgh is a city of hills, steep, dramatic hills that rise up suddenly from the rivers, creating a landscape that surprises people who visit for the first time. You'll be driving along a flat road, and then, quite suddenly, you're climbing up and up, the street tilting at angles that seem almost impossible. Some of these hills are so steep that staircases were built instead of roads. Hundreds of public steps threading through neighborhoods, connecting the high places to the low places. The elevation changes throughout the city are significant. We're talking about differences of hundreds of feet between the riverbanks and the hilltops. This topography shaped everything. It determined where neighborhoods could be built, where roads could go, how people moved through the city. Even today, these hills define Pittsburgh, giving it a vertical dimension that feels almost alpine at times. Certainly not what you'd expect from a Rust Belt city in western Pennsylvania. Here's something that might surprise you. Pittsburgh sits within 500 miles of about half the population of the United States. Draw a circle with a 500-mile radius around Pittsburgh, and you'll encompass massive cities. New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Boston, Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Toronto. That proximity has mattered throughout Pittsburgh's history, making it a natural hub, a meeting point, a place where goods and people could flow in multiple directions. It's not coastal, but it's not landlocked in the way we usually think of landlocked places. Those three rivers connected Pittsburgh to a vast network of waterways, and the hills, despite being challenging, never quite isolated the city from the broader currents of American life and commerce. The climate here is what meteorologists would call humid continental, 4 distinct seasons that each make their presence known. Winters bring cold and snow, though perhaps not as much snow as cities further north or closer to the Great Lakes. Spring arrives gradually, with temperatures warming and trees beginning to bud, though the weather can be unpredictable, shifting from warm to cold and back again. Summers are warm, sometimes quite humid, with temperatures that can climb into the upper 80s or low 90s Fahrenheit during the hottest stretches. And then autumn. Autumn in Pittsburgh is often considered the most beautiful season, when the hills surrounding the city transform into waves of red and gold and orange, the hardwood forests putting on their annual show before winter returns. The city gets a fair amount of precipitation throughout the year, rain and snow distributed fairly evenly across the months, keeping everything green during the growing season. In recent years, Pittsburgh has gained something of a reputation for climate resilience as scientists and city planners look toward the future, considering which places might fare better or worse as the climate changes. Pittsburgh appears on lists of cities that could be relatively more stable. It's far from the coasts, so sea level rise isn't a direct concern. It has access to abundant fresh water from those three rivers and from the broader watershed. The risks of extreme heat, while real, are perhaps less severe than in cities further south or west. Droughts are possible, but historically less frequent than in other regions. This doesn't mean the city is immune to climate impacts. No place is. But there's a growing recognition that Pittsburgh's geography and resources might offer certain advantages in the decades ahead. It's a quiet sort of resilience, nothing dramatic, just the steady presence of water and hills in a location that may prove fortunate in ways no one fully anticipated when the city was first founded. Let's talk about size for a moment. The city of Pittsburgh itself, the official municipal boundaries, contains around 300,000 people, give or take. That number has fluctuated over the decades. The city was more populous in the mid-20th century when steel was king, and then population declined as industries changed and people moved to the suburbs. But the city proper is just one part of the story. The greater Pittsburgh metropolitan area is much larger, home to more than 2 million people spread across multiple counties. This metro area extends into the surrounding hills and valleys, encompassing smaller cities and towns and suburban communities, all of them connected to Pittsburgh in various ways, economically, culturally, through family ties and commutes and shared history. So when people talk about Pittsburgh, they might mean the city itself, compact and hilly and divided into distinct neighborhoods. Or they might mean the broader region, a patchwork of places that all orbit around those three rivers at the center. The total area of Pittsburgh, measuring both land and water, comes to just under 60 square miles. Of that, about 55 square miles is land, and roughly 2 square miles is water. Those rivers we keep coming back to, plus streams and other smaller waterways. It's not a large city by area, especially compared to sprawling Sunbelt cities that stretch for miles and miles. Pittsburgh's boundaries are constrained by geography, by those hills and rivers, which means the city grew upward and into the valleys rather than spreading out endlessly in all directions. This compactness gives Pittsburgh a certain density, a feeling that you're always near something, always just a bridge away from another neighborhood, another part of the city, revealing itself as you climb another hill or cross another river. At the very heart of Pittsburgh, where the Allegheny and Monongahela meet to form the Ohio, there's a triangular piece of land called the Golden Triangle. This is downtown Pittsburgh, the central business district shaped by the geometry of the converging rivers. When you look at a map, it's striking how clearly defined this triangle is, bounded on two sides by water and coming to a point at the confluence. This Golden Triangle became the commercial heart of the city, where skyscrapers rose, where banks and corporations set up headquarters, where the energy of the city concentrated itself. The name itself, Golden Triangle, speaks to both the shape and the value of this land, this meeting point of rivers that became a meeting point of commerce and culture and urban life. And at the very tip of that Golden Triangle, right at the point where the rivers meet, there's a park, Point State Park. It's a green space that opens up the confluence to the public, offering a place to stand and watch the water flow together. At the center of the park, there's a fountain, a large fountain that shoots water high into the air, visible from bridges and buildings all around, a marker of the point itself. On a sunny day, the fountain catches the light and you can see rainbows in the spray. It's become one of Pittsburgh's most recognizable features. This fountain at the point, this deliberate celebration of water at a place where water has always been the defining fact. People come here to walk, to sit, to watch the rivers, to remember that this is where it all began, where three rivers meet and a city grew up around them. And so we've started to sketch the outlines of Pittsburgh, a city of rivers and hills, of indigenous history and geographic advantage, of moderate climate and quiet resilience, of compact size and triangular downtown, all centered around that point where water meets water and continues on its way to the sea. Let these images settle in your mind as you drift. The flow of rivers, the rise of hills, the spray of a fountain catching light. Now let's drift back in time, back to when this place at the confluence was not yet a city, not yet even a town, but rather a strategic point that empires wanted to control. The French arrived first in this particular contest, building Fort Duquesne in 1754, naming it after the Marquis Duquesne, a governor of New France. They understood what the Seneca had always known, that whoever controlled this point controlled access to the Ohio River Valley, controlled trade routes and military routes, and the entire flow of expansion westward. The fort sat right there at the point, a wooden structure designed to project French power into a contested wilderness. But empires rise and fall, and in 1758, during what became known as the French and Indian War, British forces finally captured the fort. The French, realizing they couldn't hold it, burned Fort Duquesne themselves before retreating, leaving the British to claim the charred remains and the strategic ground beneath. The British rebuilt, creating something larger and more permanent, and they called it Fort Pitt. Fort Pitt took its name from William Pitt the Elder, who was serving as Britain's Secretary of State at the time. William Pitt, a complicated figure in British politics, known for his oratory, his strategic vision, his belief in British imperial expansion. He never visited this place that would bear his name. He likely never thought much about this particular fort on the edge of the British colonial holdings. But his name stuck, first to the fort and then to the settlement that grew up around it. As British soldiers and traders and settlers gathered near Fort Pitt, a small community formed, people building homes, opening shops, creating the earliest version of what would become a city. And they called it Pittsburgh, keeping the name even after the Revolutionary War ended British rule, even as the new United States began to take shape. The name honored a British politician, which is a bit ironic for an American city, but by then the name had simply become the word people used when they talked about this place at the rivers. For a brief period in American history, Pittsburgh lost its H. From 1891 to 1911, the city was officially spelled Pittsburgh without that final letter. This happened because the United States Board on Geographic Names decided to standardize place names across the country, and one of their rules was that city names ending in "burg" should drop the H for consistency. Pittsburgh became Pittsburgh, matching the spelling of other American cities, but the people of Pittsburgh, they didn't take kindly to this change. For 20 years, residents protested, argued, wrote letters, insisted that their city's name was spelled with an H, and always had been. It became a matter of civic pride, this single letter. Finally, in 1911, the board relented, and the H was officially restored. Pittsburgh became Pittsburgh again, and the city celebrated the return of its proper spelling. It's a small detail in the grand sweep of history, but it tells you something about Pittsburgh, about stubbornness, about identity, about not letting outsiders dictate who you are, even when it comes to something as simple as spelling. At the heart of early Pittsburgh, there was a square, Market Square, they called it, and it's still there today, one of the oldest public spaces in the city. This square was laid out in 1784, just after the Revolutionary War, designated as a place where farmers and merchants could gather to sell their goods. Picture it, unpaved at first, muddy in rain, dusty in drought, surrounded by simple buildings, wooden structures that gradually gave way to brick as the settlement grew. People came to Market Square to buy food, to trade, to hear news, to gather and talk and conduct the business of daily life. It was the center of community in those early days. A place where you go to find out what was happening, to see your neighbors, to feel connected to the town growing up around you. Markets were held regularly, vendors setting up stalls, calling out their wares, the square filling with the sounds and smells of commerce. Over the decades and centuries, Market Square has changed. It's been paved and repaved, surrounded by taller buildings, transformed by technology and transportation and time. But it remains a public gathering space, still fulfilling something of its original purpose, still a place where people come together. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Pittsburgh became known for whiskey. The surrounding countryside was good for growing grain, rye and corn especially, and farmers discovered that it was much easier to transport their grain in liquid form than in sacks. You could distill corn or rye into whiskey, put the whiskey in barrels, and move it down the river with far less bulk and far more profit. Small distilleries sprang up all around Pittsburgh and in the nearby countryside. The city became a center of whiskey production, barrels leaving constantly on flatboats and keelboats heading down the Ohio to markets in Kentucky and Tennessee and further south. This was good business until 1791, when the new federal government, desperate for revenue, imposed an excise tax on whiskey. That tax was deeply unpopular with the farmers and distillers, who saw it as unfair burden, an attempt by a distant government to take their hard-earned money. The resistance to the whiskey tax grew, particularly in western Pennsylvania, eventually erupting into what history calls the Whiskey Rebellion. Federal troops were sent to suppress the uprising, and the rebellion was put down, but the episode left its mark, a memory of defiance, of people in the Western territories feeling separate from and at odds with the Eastern establishment. And through it all, the whiskey kept flowing, the stills kept operating. Pittsburgh's early economy, running in part on grain, transformed into spirits. As you drift deeper now, consider another thread of Pittsburgh's early history, its role in the Underground Railroad. Before the Civil War, when slavery still existed in the southern states and people were regarded as property, there were networks of people in the North who helped enslaved individuals escape to freedom. Pittsburgh, sitting right on the border between free and slave territory, became an important station on these secret routes. The city's black community, along with white abolitionists and Quakers and others who opposed slavery, offered shelter, food, guidance to people fleeing north. There were houses in Pittsburgh, ordinary-looking houses, with hidden rooms or cellars where people could hide. There were churches that served as meeting points and safe havens. The rivers that defined Pittsburgh also served the Underground Railroad. Boats could carry escapees across the water, continuing north toward Canada and true freedom. The exact details are often lost to history because secrecy was essential. Records weren't kept, names weren't written down. The work was done quietly and at great personal risk. But we know Pittsburgh was part of this network, part of the collective effort to resist slavery's reach, part of the long struggle for freedom that defined the decades before the Civil War. The history of labor in Pittsburgh stretches back further than you might think. Even in the early days, before the massive steel mills, there were workers organizing, striking, demanding better conditions and fair pay. Pittsburgh's early industries, glassmaking, boat building, iron forging, all required skilled labor, and skilled workers quickly learned that they had power when they acted together. The first recorded strikes in Pittsburgh date back to the early 1800s. Workers walking off the job to protest wages or hours or treatment. These early labor actions were often small, localized, involving just one shop or one factory, but they established a pattern that would continue throughout Pittsburgh's history. Workers here developed a tradition of solidarity, of standing together against owners and managers who wanted to extract as much labor as possible for as little cost. This wasn't unique to Pittsburgh, of course. Labor struggles were happening in industrial cities across America, but Pittsburgh's particular mix of industries and immigrant populations and geographic isolation created a labor culture that was especially strong, especially willing to fight. Long before the great steel strikes of the 20th century, Pittsburgh workers were already organizing, already pushing back, already asserting their right to dignity and fair compensation for their labor. These early strikes were often met with resistance, sometimes violent resistance. Owners brought in replacement workers, hired private security forces, called on local militia or police to break up picket lines. Workers responded with their own tactics, sabotage sometimes, picket lines that couldn't be crossed, community support that sustained strikers when paychecks stopped coming. It was a constant push and pull, capital versus labor, each side testing the limits of their power. And through it all, Pittsburgh kept growing, kept building, kept drawing more workers who needed jobs and more industries that needed workers. The city's economy was built as much on conflict as on cooperation, on the struggles between those who owned the means of production and those who operated them. This tension would define Pittsburgh for generations, shaping its politics, its culture, its sense of itself, as a working class city where people didn't back down from a fight. So here we have the foundations of Pittsburgh, a fort that changed hands and gave the city its name, a name that lost and regained its final letter, a market square where community gathered, a whiskey boom that tied the city to the land and to rebellion, an underground railroad that carried people toward freedom, and early labor movements that planted seeds of resistance and solidarity. These aren't just facts and dates, they're the layered history of a place, the accumulated stories that make Pittsburgh what it is, the roots that go down deep into soil and stone, and the flowing water of 3 rivers. Let these stories wash over you now, gentle as current, steady as the hills that have watched it all unfold. Pittsburgh became the steel city not all at once, but gradually as iron forges gave way to steel mills, as new technologies made it possible to produce steel in vast quantities, as the city's location and resources aligned perfectly with the demands of a rapidly industrializing nation. Steel is stronger than iron, more versatile, more useful for building the modern world, for railroads and bridges, for skyscrapers and ships, for all the infrastructure that America needed as it grew westward and upward. Pittsburgh had everything steel production required: coal from the surrounding hills, limestone deposits nearby, those 3 rivers for transportation, and access to iron ore that came down from Minnesota on Great Lakes ships, and then by rail. By the late 19th century, Pittsburgh was producing more steel than anywhere else in America, maybe anywhere else in the world. The nickname Steel City emerged naturally, descriptively, a simple statement of what Pittsburgh had become, a place where mills lined the rivers, where blast furnaces glowed red through the night, where the sound of industry never quite stopped, where steel was everything. But steel came with a cost that settled over the city like a blanket. Smog, thick, dark, choking smog that came from the burning of coal, from the industrial processes that ran constantly in mills and factories. In Pittsburgh's heyday as an industrial powerhouse, the air was often so polluted that streetlights stayed on during the day. The sky would be dark at noon, blocked out by smoke and particulates, the sun struggling to penetrate the haze. People wore white shirts to work in the morning, and they'd be gray with soot by afternoon. Buildings turned black from the accumulation of industrial residue. The pollution was everywhere, inescapable, a trade-off that seemed necessary for prosperity, for jobs, for the wealth that flowed from those mills. Residents lived with it, adapted to it, accepted it as the price of living in a working city. The smog defined Pittsburgh as much as the steel did. When people thought of Pittsburgh, they pictured a dark city, a grimy city, a place where industry took precedence over everything else, including the air people breathed. It wasn't until decades later, after World War II, that the city would begin serious efforts to address the pollution, to clean the air, to reclaim the sky. But during the peak industrial years, the smog was simply part of life, part of the bargain Pittsburgh made with progress. Pittsburgh's role in American industrialization extended far beyond just making steel. The city became a testing ground for industrial technologies, a place where engineers and entrepreneurs experimented with new methods of production, new ways to organize labor and capital, new approaches to building massive industrial enterprises. Andrew Carnegie built his steel empire here, developing vertical integration strategies that controlled every stage of production, from raw materials to finished product. Henry Clay Frick revolutionized coke production, creating the fuel that blast furnaces needed. George Westinghouse established his company in Pittsburgh, pioneering electrical systems and air brakes for trains. These weren't just businesses. They were innovations that changed how America worked, how it built, how it powered itself. Pittsburgh became a model that other industrial cities tried to follow, a demonstration of what was possible when natural resources, transportation networks, capital investment, and concentrated labor all came together in one place. The steel and the products made from it went everywhere, into buildings in New York and Chicago, into railroads crossing the Great Plains, into ships sailing from coastal ports, into the very infrastructure that made modern America possible. To work in Pittsburgh's mills and factories, the city needed workers, thousands and thousands of workers, and they came, drawn by the promise of jobs, of steady wages, of opportunities that didn't exist in the places they were leaving behind. Immigration to Pittsburgh surged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly from Eastern and Southern Europe. Polish workers came, settling in neighborhoods where Polish was spoken as much as English. Italians arrived, bringing their language and culture and traditions, creating communities that felt like pieces of Italy transplanted to Pennsylvania hills. Slovaks, Ukrainians, Croatians, Serbs, Russians, Lithuanians, Jews from various parts of Eastern Europe, they all came to Pittsburgh, all looking for work, all willing to take the hard, dangerous jobs in the mills and factories. These immigrants didn't just work, they built communities, established churches in their own languages, opened shops and restaurants and social clubs, created whole neighborhoods that maintained old world traditions while adapting to new world realities. Pittsburgh became a patchwork of immigrant communities, each with its own character, its own festivals and foods and ways of being, all of them contributing to the city's growth, and all of them shaped by the grueling work of industrial labor. The neighborhoods that formed around the mills took on distinct identities based on which mill employed most of the residents. Homestead grew up around the Homestead Steel Works along the Monongahela River. Braddock formed around the Edgar Thompson Steel Works. Aliquippa, McKees Rocks, Rankin, these and other mill towns stretched along the rivers, each one dominated by the mill that provided employment, the mill whose whistle called workers to their shifts, the mill whose fortunes determined whether families prospered or struggled. These neighborhoods were tight-knit by necessity. People lived close together in modest houses, often multiple families sharing space, everyone knowing everyone else because everyone worked in the same place, faced the same dangers, dealt with the same bosses. The mills didn't just provide jobs. They structured entire communities, creating social worlds that revolved around work shifts and union meetings and the shared experience of industrial labor. When the mills ran well, the neighborhoods thrived. When the mills cut production or closed down, the neighborhoods suffered. Everything was connected to those massive industrial complexes that loomed over the rivers, their smokestacks marking the landscape, their presence defining daily life for generations of Pittsburgh families. In 1869, amid all this industrial growth, a young man named Henry John Hines started a food company. He began modestly selling horseradish that he grew and processed himself, going door to door and to local grocers. But Hines had ambitions beyond horseradish. He believed in quality, in purity, in letting customers see exactly what they were buying. Revolutionary ideas at a time when food adulteration was common, and companies often hid inferior ingredients in opaque packaging. Hines famously used clear glass bottles so people could see his products. He expanded beyond horseradish to pickles, to condiments, eventually to the product that would make his name synonymous with a condiment, ketchup. Heinz ketchup with its distinctive Keystone label, became an American staple found on tables across the country and eventually around the world. The company grew into one of Pittsburgh's major employers, not in steel, but in food processing, showing that Pittsburgh's industrial prowess wasn't limited to heavy manufacturing. The Heinz factory became a Pittsburgh landmark, its sign visible from miles away. Its smell, the sweet vinegary smell of pickles and condiments, drifting through nearby neighborhoods, and the Heinz family became Pittsburgh aristocracy, their wealth-funding civic projects and philanthropy that shaped the city in ways that had nothing to do with ketchup, but everything to do with the fortune ketchup built. In 1888, another company was founded that would become intrinsically linked to Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Reduction Company, which would eventually be known as Alcoa, the aluminum company of America. Charles Martin Hall had invented a revolutionary process for smelting aluminum, making it possible to produce the metal cheaply and in large quantities. Before Hall's invention, aluminum was rare and expensive, more precious than silver. After it, aluminum became accessible, affordable, useful for countless applications. Pittsburgh, with its abundant electrical power from the rivers and its culture of industrial innovation, was the perfect place to scale up aluminum production. The Pittsburgh Reduction Company set up operations and began producing aluminum on an industrial scale, quickly becoming the dominant force in American aluminum production. Alcoa would grow into a massive corporation with global reach, but its roots were right here in Pittsburgh, born from the same spirit of industrial innovation that created the steel industry. Aluminum from Pittsburgh went into everything: aircraft, automobiles, building materials, consumer goods, another metal, another revolution, another way Pittsburgh powered American industry and American life. Not everything in Pittsburgh during this era was about heavy industry. In 1870, a restaurant opened that would become one of the city's most enduring establishments, the original Oyster House. Located on Market Street, not far from Market Square, where farmers had sold their goods nearly a century earlier, the original Oyster House served seafood to a city hundreds of miles from the ocean. This might seem odd. Oysters in landlocked Pittsburgh, but remember those rivers, remember the transportation networks. Oysters could be brought in from the coast, packed in ice or barrels of seawater transported by rail, arriving fresh enough to serve. The restaurant became popular, a place where working people and business people alike could get a good meal, could enjoy seafood that connected them to distant coasts, could sit at a counter or a table and take a break from. The intensity of industrial Pittsburgh, the original Oyster House, survived through all the changes that came to the city, through the peak of steel production, through the pollution and labor strife, through the eventual decline of heavy industry, through urban renewal and economic transformation. It's still there today, still serving oysters and seafood, a living connection to Pittsburgh's industrial past, a reminder that even in a city built on steel and aluminum and hard labor, people still wanted places to gather, to eat, to enjoy simple pleasures that had nothing to do with mills or factories, or the grime that settled over everything. So here's Pittsburgh in its industrial glory, the steel city rising, smokestacks piercing polluted skies, immigrants arriving to work the mills, neighborhoods forming in the shadows of industrial complexes, entrepreneurs building companies that would reshape American life, and through it all, small establishments like the original Oyster House providing a bit of normalcy, a bit of connection to worlds beyond the rivers and the hills. This was Pittsburgh's great era, when it mattered on the national stage, when what happened here rippled outward, when the steel made here built America. Let the sound of those mills fade now into the background of your drifting thoughts. The glow of blast furnaces dimming. The city settling into the comfortable darkness of deep rest. Pittsburgh has more bridges than any other city in the world, 446 bridges to be precise, though the exact count can vary slightly depending on how you define a bridge, what you count, and what you don't. But the number is staggering however you measure it. More bridges than Venice, more than Amsterdam, more than any other city that makes claims to bridge supremacy. And this makes perfect sense when you remember those three rivers, when you picture the topography, when you imagine trying to build a functioning city in a place where water and steep hills constantly interrupt the landscape. Bridges became necessary, not decorative. Every neighborhood needed connections to other neighborhoods. Every part of the city needed access to the others. And that meant crossing rivers again and again, spanning valleys, linking hillsides. The bridges of Pittsburgh range from small, utilitarian structures carrying streets over ravines to massive, iconic spans that have become symbols of the city itself. The Roberto Clemente Bridge, the Andy Warhol Bridge, the Rachel Carson Bridge, three identical yellow bridges stretching across the Allegheny River, often called the Three Sisters, painted that distinctive Aztec gold color that catches the light and makes them unmistakable. Steel bridges built by Steel City, monuments to engineering necessity, connections that turned a fragmented landscape into something that could function as one place, one city, one community, despite all the geographic obstacles. When hills are too steep for roads, Pittsburgh built stairs, not just a few stairs, but hundreds of flights of public stairs, city-maintained stairways that are considered official streets, complete with street sign and addresses. These are in the grand ceremonial staircases you might find in European cities. These are working-class infrastructure, steep climbs connecting the flat areas along the rivers to the neighborhoods perched on hilltops. Some of these stairways have names: the Canton Avenue Steps, the Boosted Street Steps, the Southside Slope Steps. Some are concrete, some are wood. Some are so worn by decades of footsteps that the treads have hollows, and then where countless feet have passed. Walking these stairs is how people got to work, got home, got groceries up the hill before everyone had cars. Even now, these stairs remain maintained by the city, used by residents who live in the steep neighborhoods where cars can't easily go. In winter, the city is supposed to salt them, though sometimes that doesn't happen and they become treacherous with ice. In spring and summer, vegetation grows along the railings, and you can climb through tunnels of green, ascending or descending between different elevations of the city. There's something poetic about these stairs, about a city that accepted its vertical nature so completely that it turned stairways into streets, making the impossible terrain not just livable, but officially part of the urban grid. Canton Avenue holds a particular distinction. It's been measured and verified as the steepest officially recorded public street in the United States. The grade on Canton Avenue in the Beachview neighborhood reaches an incredible 37% at its steepest section. 37%. That means for every 100 feet you travel forward, you're climbing 37 feet upward. Stand at the bottom and look up, and it barely looks like a street at all. More like a wall with pavement on it. Drive up it if you dare, and your car tilts so far back that you can barely see over the hood, and you pray your brakes work properly, because coming down is even more terrifying than going up. In winter, the city closes Canton Avenue because it's simply too dangerous when ice or snow cover the pavement. The houses along Canton Avenue have driveways that require special engineering, parking that requires nerves of steel, but people live there, have lived there for generations, accepting the extreme angle as just part of life in Pittsburgh, part of what it means to inhabit a city that refuses to be flat, that insists on climbing and descending, on making residents earn their views. To move through Pittsburgh, you often have to go through Pittsburgh, literally through tunnels bored into the hills. The Liberty Tunnels opened in 1924, connecting the South Hills neighborhoods to downtown, eliminating the need to take long, winding routes over or around the hills. Before the tunnels, getting from the South Hills to downtown was an ordeal, a journey that took far longer than the straight-line distance would suggest. The Liberty Tunnels changed that, creating a direct route right through Mount Washington. There are 2 tubes, one for each direction of traffic, and during rush hour, they fill with a stream of headlights and taillights, cars passing through the mountain in a matter of minutes. The tunnels are painted white inside to maximize the visibility of the lighting, and as you drive through, there's a mild sense of claustrophobia, of being enclosed in rock, of trusting that the engineering will hold, and it does hold, has held for nearly a century now, tens of millions of vehicles passing through, commuters becoming so accustomed to the tunnels that they barely think about the tons of earth and rock suspended above them as they drive. But the most famous tunnel in Pittsburgh, the one that visitors remember and residents love, is the Fort Pitt Tunnel. The Fort Pitt Tunnel performs a magic trick. If you're coming into the city from the west, you enter the tunnel, and for a moment you're enclosed in concrete and tile, moving through a space that reveals nothing about what's ahead. And then you emerge. The tunnel opens up, and suddenly, spread before you, is the entire city skyline. The Golden Triangle rising up with its skyscrapers gleaming, the rivers flowing, bridges spanning the water, the whole panorama of Pittsburgh presenting itself all at once. It's called the Fort Pitt Tunnel Reveal, and it's genuinely dramatic, genuinely beautiful. A moment of surprise that doesn't diminish even if you've experienced it hundreds of times. Urban planners and transportation engineers say it's one of the most spectacular city approaches in America. This sudden transition from enclosed tunnel to open vista, from darkness to light, from not seeing to seeing everything. For people arriving in Pittsburgh for the first time, it's often their first impression. This burst of city that appears as if conjured, as if the tunnel was designed not just for transportation, but for theatrical effect. To understand Pittsburgh's relationship with its topography, you might ride the Duquesne Incline, one of the 2 remaining funicular railways that climb Mount Washington. The Duquesne Incline has been operating since 1877. its wooden cable cars ascending and descending the steep slope on steel rails, pulled by cables wound around massive drums in the station at the top. This isn't a tourist attraction that was built for tourists. It's authentic working-class infrastructure that became a tourist attraction because it survived when so many other inclines didn't. At one point, Pittsburgh had nearly 20 inclines, all of them serving the same purpose, carrying workers who lived on the hilltops down to the mills and factories along the rivers, then carrying them back up at the end of their shifts. One by one, the inclines closed as cars became common and roads improved, and the economics of maintaining them became unsustainable. But the Duquesne Incline persisted, saved by community effort, maintained as both functional transportation and historical preservation. Riding the incline, you sit in a wooden car that creaks and sways slightly as it climbs, and you watch the city drop away below you, the angle becoming steeper, the ground falling away until you're high above the river, high above the neighborhoods, looking down at a perspective that makes Pittsburgh's geography completely clear. At the top, there's an observation deck with what many consider the best view of the city. The three rivers meeting, the Golden Triangle, the bridges, the hills, beyond. Everything that makes Pittsburgh distinctive visible, all at once. The rivers didn't just provide transportation and power, they shaped where neighborhoods could form and what character they would have. The north side sits on flat land across the Allegheny from downtown, historically industrial, but also home to some of Pittsburgh's grandest old institutions. The south side stretches along the Monongahela, narrow strips of flat land between river and hills, with the south side flats and then the south side slopes, climbing upward at improbable angles. The East End neighborhoods spread out, where the land opens up a bit, where the hills relent slightly, allowing for more conventional urban development. And everywhere, the presence of water influenced how people moved, where they worked, which neighborhoods felt connected to which others. Before bridges were common, rivers were barriers as much as highways, dividing the city into separate zones that developed their own identities. Each river valley had its own mills, its own ethnic communities, its own character. Even now, with bridges everywhere, Pittsburghers often identify strongly with which part of the city they're from, which side of which river, which hill or valley or neighborhood. The geography created a city of small, distinct places rather than one homogeneous urban mass, and the rivers remain the organizing principle, the lines that define and divide and connect, the flowing boundaries that you have to cross again and again just to live a normal life here. So Pittsburgh built itself around its impossible landscape, not by fighting it, but by adapting to it, by building bridges and stairs and tunnels and inclines, by accepting steepness and developing the infrastructure to live with it. The engineering required to make Pittsburgh work is extraordinary when you stop and think about it, when you imagine trying to create a functioning city in a place that seems designed to resist easy habitation. But Pittsburgh did it generation after generation, solving one problem after another, until the challenges became character, until the bridges and hills and tunnels and stairs became not obstacles but identity, not problems but distinctions, not things to overcome but things to celebrate as uniquely, unmistakably Pittsburgh. Let your thoughts climb and descend now with those cable cars, drift through those tunnels, cross those yellow bridges as your mind settles into the particular geography of rest, the topography of sleep, Pittsburgh today is home to 8 Fortune 500 companies, not the number it had during the steel era, perhaps, but a respectable showing for a city that supposedly died with its mills. These aren't all steel companies, though U.S. Steel does maintain its headquarters here, a reminder of the past that persists into the present. PNC Financial Services Group towers over downtown, one of the nation's largest banks, housed in a distinctive glass skyscraper that incorporates sustainable design features, a building that makes a statement about Pittsburgh's present and future rather than its past. PPG Industries, once Pittsburgh plate glass, has evolved far beyond its original focus, now a global supplier of paints, coatings, and specialty materials. The Kraft Heinz Company, descended from that horseradish salesman we met earlier, remains headquartered here even after mergers and acquisitions transformed it into a multinational food conglomerate. These Fortune 500 companies provide employment, generate economic activity, anchor corporate ecosystems that include suppliers and service providers, and all the businesses that feed off large corporate presence. They give Pittsburgh economic stability, connections to global markets, a continued relevance in American business that smaller post-industrial cities often lack. Pittsburgh's modern economy is thus a patchwork, a mixture of old and new, of healthcare giants and technology startups, of Fortune 500 stability and entrepreneurial risk-taking, of institutional anchors like universities and hospitals alongside newer ventures that might succeed spectacularly or fail quietly. The city is no longer defined by a single industry the way it was during the steel era. There's no one thing that is obviously, centrally, definitively Pittsburgh in the way steel once was. Instead, there's diversity, multiple sectors all contributing, all growing at different rates, all facing different challenges and opportunities. This diversity is probably healthier economically. When one sector struggles, others might still thrive, preventing the kind of total collapse that happened when steel died. But it also makes Pittsburgh's identity less clear, harder to explain to outsiders, more complicated for residents to understand and embrace. What is Pittsburgh now? A healthcare city? A robotics hub? A former steel town trying to stay relevant? All of these answers are partially true and partially incomplete. Perhaps the best answer is that Pittsburgh is a city in transition, still becoming whatever it will ultimately be, still figuring out its post-industrial identity, still working through the implications of its transformation. The Fortune 500 companies provide stability and anchors. The healthcare systems employ thousands and deliver critical services. The life sciences sector brings innovation and investment. The robotics cluster positions Pittsburgh at the forefront of technological change. The broader tech ecosystem creates entrepreneurial energy. All of this adds up to something viable, something functional, something that allows the city to survive and, in some ways, thrive. But it's still forming, still solidifying, still working out how all the pieces fit together, how to be one city with multiple economic engines, how to benefit all residents rather than just some, how to honor the past while building the future. Rest now in this complexity, in this patchwork economy, in this city that isn't one thing but many things. Let the thought of Fortune 500 towers and hospital corridors and robotics laboratories drift through your mind like the varied currents of three rivers meeting, each bringing different waters, each contributing to the flow, all of them together, creating something larger than any one stream could create alone. Pittsburgh's modern economy, diverse and complicated and imperfect, but alive, functioning, providing for hundreds of thousands of people, continuing the city's long story into a future that would have been unimaginable to the steel workers. Who wants to find this place? Pittsburgh doesn't feel like one unified city. It feels like 90 distinct neighborhoods that happen to share a name and a government. 90 neighborhoods, each with its own character, its own history, its own way of being Pittsburgh. This fragmentation comes from the geography, those hills and rivers that divided the landscape into separate pockets, each developing independently before they were eventually stitched together into something called Pittsburgh. But even after political unification, the neighborhoods maintained their distinctiveness, their separate identities, their fierce local pride. People in Pittsburgh don't usually say they're from Pittsburgh. They say they're from Squirrel Hill or Mount Washington or the North Side or wherever their particular neighborhood happens to be. The neighborhood is the primary identity, the unit that matters in daily life, the place you actually live rather than the abstract larger city. Each neighborhood has its own commercial district, its own churches and community centers, its own ways of doing things. Some neighborhoods are wealthy, some are working class, some are mixed, some are historically Polish or Italian or Irish or African American or Jewish. Some are old, settled, traditional. Some are newer, changing, gentrifying. The variety is remarkable. You can drive 10 minutes in Pittsburgh and feel like you've entered a completely different city. Different architecture, different demographics, different energy, different everything. Lawrenceville sits along the Allegheny River, a neighborhood that has transformed dramatically over the past few decades. Once a working class area with aging housing stock and declining commercial activity, Lawrenceville has become one of Pittsburgh's trendiest neighborhoods, filled with galleries and boutiques and restaurants and bars that draw people from across the city. Butler Street, the main commercial corridor, is now lined with businesses catering to younger, more affluent residents, craft breweries and farm-to-table restaurants and vintage clothing stores and art spaces. The transformation has been dramatic enough to spark serious discussions about gentrification, about displacement of longtime residents, about whether the neighborhood's revival is a success story or a cautionary tale. Old row houses have been renovated and sold for prices that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. New residential development has filled vacant lots. The demographic composition has shifted noticeably. Lawrenceville is undeniably more prosperous than it was, more vibrant in conventional economic terms. But the question of who benefits from that prosperity and who gets pushed out remains contested and complicated. The Strip District runs along the Allegheny River east of downtown, a long, narrow neighborhood that was historically Pittsburgh's wholesale and produce district. This is where food came into the city from surrounding farms, where warehouses stored goods that would be distributed to markets and restaurants throughout the region. The Strip District still maintains some of that wholesale character. There are still produce markets and ethnic food stores and wholesalers operating out of old brick buildings. But the Strip has also become a destination, a place where people come on weekends to shop and eat and wander through a district that feels authentically Pittsburgh, that hasn't been sanitized or made cutesy, that still has grit alongside its more polished, newer businesses. Primanti Brothers, famous for sandwiches with French fries and coleslaw piled right onto the sandwich itself, has multiple locations, but the Strip District location feels most authentic, most connected to the sandwich's working class origins. Small ethnic markets sell Polish sausages and Italian imports and Asian ingredients and Latin American products, reflecting Pittsburgh's immigrant history and present diversity. The Strip District is chaotic and crowded and alive in ways that feel increasingly rare in American cities, a place that hasn't been completely transformed by post-industrial economics, that maintains connections to older ways of urban commercial life. The Mexican war streets, despite the name, have nothing to do with Mexico or military conflict. The streets are named after battles from the Mexican-American War, a 19th century naming convention that has nothing to do with the neighborhood's character. This neighborhood on the north side consists of beautifully preserved Victorian row houses, many of them meticulously restored, creating one of Pittsburgh's most architecturally significant residential districts. Walking through the Mexican war streets, you see ornate brickwork, decorative cornices, bay windows, all the elaborate details that Victorian builders loved. The neighborhood has been through cycles of prosperity and decline and renewal, built for wealthy residents in the late 19th century, declining in the mid-20th century as population shifted to suburbs, then gradually rediscovered and restored, starting in the 1960s and 70s, by people who appreciated the architecture and were willing to put in the work of renovation. Today, the Mexican war streets are desirable, expensive, protected as a historic district, a place where preservation succeeded in maintaining the physical character of the neighborhood even as everything else about Pittsburgh changed. Bloomfield calls itself Pittsburgh's Little Italy, and the name is accurate. This neighborhood has maintained Italian-American character longer and more thoroughly than most urban Italian enclaves in American cities. Liberty Avenue through Bloomfield is lined with Italian restaurants, bakeries, specialty food stores, social clubs. The annual feast days still happen, religious processions that reflect traditions carried over from southern Italy, maintained across generations. St. Joseph's Church anchors the neighborhood, its architecture and devotional life reflecting Italian Catholic tradition. You can still hear Italian spoken on the streets, though less commonly than in decades past, and the businesses still cater to Italian-American tastes. Fresh pasta, imported olive oil, specific cheeses and cured meats, cannoli and pizzels, and all the desserts that define Italian-American food culture. Bloomfield isn't frozen in time. It changes like every neighborhood does. Younger residents moving in, new businesses opening that have nothing to do with Italian heritage. But the Italian character persists more strongly here than in most places, creating a neighborhood that feels distinctive, that offers something specific rather than generic, that maintains cultural traditions even as broader assimilation has eroded those traditions in other contexts. Pittsburgh celebrates its ethnic diversity through festivals scattered throughout the year, each one honoring a different immigrant community's heritage and contributions to the city. The Three Rivers Arts Festival in June celebrates creativity broadly. The Pittsburgh Irish Festival features traditional music and dance. The Pittsburgh Greek Food Festival offers food and cultural performances. The Polish Hill Civic Association organizes Polish heritage events. The Mexican War Streets hosts a house and garden tour. The Bloomfield Little Italy Days celebrate Italian heritage. Kennywood Amusement Park has ethnic heritage days honoring different communities. These festivals serve multiple purposes. They maintain cultural traditions and pass them to younger generations. They create opportunities for communities to gather and celebrate their heritage. They educate other residents about cultures they might not know well. They generate pride and visibility for immigrant communities, and they're fun. They're celebrations. They're excuses to eat traditional foods and hear traditional music and participate in traditions that connect people to places and times beyond their immediate circumstances. Some of these festivals are large and draw people from across the region. Others are smaller, more intimate, primarily for community members themselves. Together, they create a calendar of ethnic celebration that makes Pittsburgh's diversity visible and valued, that insists on maintaining particular identities, even as everyone becomes American, that refuses to melt completely into the melting pot. In the middle of the north side, St. Nicholas Croatian Church stands as a remarkable example of immigrant religious architecture and artistic achievement. From the outside, it's an unassuming brick church. Nothing particularly distinctive about its exterior, but inside the church is covered floor to ceiling with religious murals created by Maxo Vanka, a Croatian artist who painted the church in 1937 and again in 1941. These aren't conventional religious murals. They're powerful, sometimes disturbing images that combine religious themes with social commentary. One mural shows Croatian immigrants arriving in Pittsburgh, the Statue of Liberty, holding forth a torch while industrial smokestacks pour out pollution in the background. Another shows a Croatian mother mourning her son killed in war, crucified on a battlefield cross, the indictment of the violence that was consuming Europe at the time Vanka painted. Another depicts the injustice of economic inequality, wealthy figures contrasted with suffering workers. Vanka painted from scaffolding, working intensively for months, creating a complete visual environment that transforms the church interior into a space that's simultaneously devotional and political, beautiful and challenging. The murals have been preserved, and the church now operates partly as a museum, offering tours that explain Vanka's work and the Croatian immigrant community that commissioned it. St. Nicholas stands as a testament to immigrant artistic achievement, to the desire of immigrant communities to create beauty and meaning in their adopted home, to the way religious spaces can serve as cultural anchors and artistic repositories, preserving not just faith but identity and memory and critique. These neighborhoods, these festivals, this church with its extraordinary murals, they're all part of how Pittsburgh actually works, how people actually live here, how daily life unfolds in a city that never quite homogenized, never quite became a single thing, never quite lost its constituent parts in favor of some unified whole. Pittsburgh remains a collection of neighborhoods, a patchwork of communities, a place where local identity often trumps citywide identity, where people care intensely about their particular corner of the city and may rarely venture to other corners. This fragmentation has costs. It can make citywide collective action difficult, can reinforce segregation and inequality, can prevent the kind of unified vision that sometimes helps cities compete effectively, but it also has benefits. It preserves diversity, maintains distinctive character, creates deep community bonds, gives people roots and belonging in ways that more homogeneous places sometimes lack. Pittsburgh's 90 neighborhoods are Pittsburgh's strength and challenge both, the foundation of its character and the barrier to its unity, the thing that makes it interesting, and the thing that makes it complicated. To live in Pittsburgh is to choose a neighborhood and to be chosen by it, to find your place in the city's complex geography of identity, to become part of something smaller and more specific than Pittsburgh generally, to become a Lawrenceville person or a Bloomfield person or a Squirrel Hill person or a Southside person or a Mount Washington person. Your neighborhood shapes your daily life, determines where you shop and eat and socialize, influences how you see the city and your place in it. The neighborhoods are where Pittsburgh becomes personal, where the abstract city becomes the concrete experience of streets and stores and neighbors and traditions. The neighborhoods are where life actually happens, where the grand narratives of industrial decline and post-industrial renewal and economic transformation get translated into individual and family and community experiences, where the story of Pittsburgh becomes your story, your neighborhood story, something lived rather than analyzed, something felt rather than studied. Let yourself settle now into the comfort of neighborhoods, of specific places with specific characters, of communities that maintain their distinctiveness, of festivals celebrating heritage, of churches preserving art and memory, of streets that belong to particular histories and particular people. Drift through these neighborhoods in your mind like a slow drive through the city, turning from one street to another, each turn revealing something different, each neighborhood offering its own version of Pittsburgh, all of them together creating the complicated, contradictory, endlessly interesting city that is Pittsburgh. The city of 90 neighborhoods, the city that is many cities, the city that refuses to be simple or singular or easily summarized. Rest now in that complexity, in that diversity, in that rich tapestry of places and people and traditions, all coexisting within the loose framework of a shared name and a shared geography. Primanti Brothers makes a sandwich that shouldn't work but does, a sandwich that piles everything together in a way that seems chaotic, excessive, almost absurd, and yet has become iconic, beloved, definitively Pittsburgh. The Primanti Brothers sandwich takes whatever meat you choose, capicola, pastrami, roast beef, whatever, and adds cheese, tomatoes, coleslaw, and French fries, all of it piled between two thick slices of Italian bread. The French fries and coleslaw aren't on the side. They're in the sandwich, part of the sandwich, essential to the sandwich. When you bite into a Primanti Brothers sandwich, you get meat and vegetables and starch and tang and texture all at once, a complete meal compressed into handheld form. The sandwich originated in the 1930s in the Strip District, created for truck drivers who needed to eat quickly, who wanted everything in one package they could hold while driving or while standing at a bar. The sandwich was practical, designed for working people who didn't have time for a sit-down meal with separate sides, but practicality became tradition, and tradition became icon. And now Primanti Brothers has expanded to multiple locations across Pittsburgh and beyond, the sandwich becoming a symbol of Pittsburgh food culture, a thing visitors feel obligated to try, a taste that locals argue about. Which location is best? Which meat is the right choice? Whether you should eat the sandwich as is or modify it in some personal way. The sandwich is excessive and glorious and completely unpretentious, which maybe tells you something about Pittsburgh itself. Here's something that might surprise you. The Big Mac was invented in Pittsburgh, not in California where McDonald's started, not at corporate headquarters, but at a Uniontown, Pennsylvania franchise just outside Pittsburgh. Invented by Jim Delegati in 1967, Delegati was a McDonald's franchisee who wanted to offer something bigger than the standard hamburger, something that would appeal to customers who wanted more substantial meal. He experimented with a double-decker burger using a middle bun layer to create 3 bun sections with 2 beef patties, adding special sauce and lettuce and cheese and pickles and onions. The Big Mac was born, tested in Pittsburgh area McDonald's locations, proven successful, rolled out nationally, and eventually globally. The Big Mac became one of the most recognizable food items in the world, sold in McDonald's restaurants across every continent, used as an economic indicator. Economists actually track Big Mac prices internationally as a way to compare currency values and purchasing power, and it started here in the Pittsburgh area, created by a franchisee trying to serve local customers better. There's a Big Mac museum in North Huntington, Pennsylvania, celebrating this piece of food history, featuring a massive statue of a Big Mac and exhibits about the sandwiches, creation, and spread. Pittsburgh gave the world Heinz ketchup and the Big Mac. Not a bad contribution to global food culture for one city. Every summer, Pittsburgh hosts Picklesburgh, a festival dedicated entirely to pickles and pickle-related foods. Let that sink in for a moment. An entire festival about pickles. It happens on the Roberto Clemente Bridge, one of those Three Sisters bridges painted Aztec gold, which gets closed to car traffic and transformed into a pedestrian festival space. Vendors sell every kind of pickle you can imagine. Classic dill pickles, bread and butter pickles, spicy pickles, sweet pickles, pickled vegetables of all kinds. Restaurants set up booths offering pickle-flavored foods. Pickle pizza, pickle ice cream, pickle beer, picklebacks, fried pickles, pickle juice as a beverage. There are pickle eating contests, pickle juice drinking contests, pickle-themed games and activities. It's completely absurd and completely sincere at the same time. Pittsburgh embracing the silliness while also genuinely celebrating pickles and pickle culture. The festival draws large crowds, people walking back and forth across the bridge, sampling pickles, enjoying the river views, participating in something that could only happen in a city comfortable enough with itself to throw a pickle festival. Picklesburgh reflects a certain Pittsburgh sensibility, not taking yourself too seriously, finding joy in simple things, celebrating food traditions, creating community events that are accessible and fun and a little bit ridiculous in the best possible way. In a nondescript building in Pittsburgh's Point Breeze neighborhood, there exists Bicycle Heaven, which claims to be the world's largest bicycle museum and shop. Inside is an overwhelming collection of bicycles from throughout cycling history, vintage bicycles from the late 1800s, classic Schwinn cruisers from the 1950s, racing bikes, children's bikes, weird experimental bikes that never caught on, celebrity bikes, bikes with stories attached. The collection numbers in the thousands, bikes hanging from the ceiling, lining the walls, filling every available space, creating a visual chaos that's simultaneously overwhelming and fascinating. The owner, Craig Morrow, has been collecting bicycles for decades, rescuing them from scrap yards, buying them from estate sales, accepting donations from people who want their old bikes to go somewhere they'll be appreciated. Bicycle Heaven is free to visit, operates as much as a museum as a functioning bike shop, represents someone's personal passion project that became a public resource. It's the kind of quirky, idiosyncratic attraction that makes cities interesting, that gives them character beyond their economic statistics and official narratives. Not many people outside Pittsburgh know about Bicycle Heaven, but those who visit tend to be charmed by its sheer excess, its lack of pretension, its celebration of bicycles as objects worthy of preservation and study and appreciation. The Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium sits on 77 acres in Highland Park, home to more than 8,000 animals representing nearly 500 species from around the world. The zoo is organized into themed areas: the African savanna, the Asian forest, the tropical forest, the islands exhibit. Elephants roam in a habitat designed to mimic their natural environment. Tigers prowl through forested enclosures. Gorillas live in a carefully designed space that allows them to exhibit natural behaviors. The aquarium portion includes a tunnel where you can walk through an underwater environment. Sharks swimming overhead, fish surrounding you on all sides, creating the illusion of being underwater yourself. The zoo takes its conservation mission seriously, participating in breeding programs for endangered species, supporting wildlife conservation projects internationally, educating visitors about environmental challenges and animal welfare. But beyond the serious mission, the zoo is simply a place where Pittsburgh families go, where children see animals they've only read about, where adults can spend an afternoon walking through carefully landscaped grounds, where the city makes space for nature, even though nature and cities aren't always compatible. The zoo represents Pittsburgh's commitment to maintaining institutions that serve public good even when they don't generate profit, that enrich community life, that give residents reasons to stay and visitors reasons to come. These elements of Pittsburgh, the excessive sandwich, the famous burger, the pickle festival, the bicycle museum, the zoo, they don't necessarily relate to each other logically. They don't tell a coherent story about economic development or urban planning or any of the serious topics we've been exploring. But they tell a different story, a story about a city that has character, that allows for quirkiness, that celebrates food and fun and strange obsessions, that doesn't take itself so seriously that it can't throw a pickle festival or maintain a museum dedicated entirely to bicycles. These are the things that make Pittsburgh livable, that give residents and visitors alike moments of joy and surprise and connection, that remind everyone that cities are for living in, not just for working in or investing in or analyzing. Think about what these quirky elements reveal about Pittsburgh's personality. The Primanti brothers' sandwich is working class, practical, unpretentious, generous with portions, not concerned with culinary sophistication, with feeding people well. The Big Mac origin story shows Pittsburgh's connection to American mass culture, to innovations that spread far beyond their points of origin, to contributions that may not be celebrated in high culture, but matter in popular culture. Picklesburgh demonstrates a willingness to be silly, to celebrate something as mundane as pickles, to create festivals that are more about community and fun than about attracting tourist dollars or building prestige. Bicycle Heaven represents the individual passions that cities allow to flourish, the collections and obsessions that wouldn't survive in smaller or more practical-minded places. The zoo shows commitment to education and conservation, to maintaining spaces where nature exists within the city, to serving families and children and anyone who wants to spend an afternoon among animals. None of these things will transform Pittsburgh's economy or solve its challenges or address its inequalities, but they make Pittsburgh Pittsburgh. They give the city texture and character and the kind of distinctiveness that can't be manufactured or planned or created through policy. A city needs a Big Mac origin story and a pickle festival and an overwhelming bicycle museum just as much as it needs Fortune 500 companies and research institutions and economic development strategies. The quirky, fun elements provide the human scale, the personal connection, the reasons people develop affection for a place beyond rational calculations about job opportunities and housing costs. They're the details you remember when you think about Pittsburgh, the stories you tell when someone asks what the city is like, the experiences that turn a place from just somewhere you live into somewhere you love. Pittsburgh has room for all of it, for the serious and the silly, for the profound and the playful, for economic transformation and pickle festivals, for robotics research and bicycle museums. The city contains multitudes, refuses to be only one thing, maintains space for contradictions and quirks and unexpected juxtapositions. You can visit the Robotics Institute in the morning and bicycle heaven in the afternoon. You can contemplate the Cathedral of Learning and then eat a sandwich with French fries piled inside it. You can work in a cutting-edge medical research facility and then spend your weekend at Picklesburg. The city allows for all these versions of itself to coexist, creating a place that's serious enough to matter, but not so serious that it loses its capacity for joy and weirdness and fun. Let your mind wander now through these lighter aspects of Pittsburgh, through sandwich shops and pickle festivals and museums filled with bicycles, through zoo paths where families walk and talk and watch animals, through all the small pleasures and quirky attractions that make a city more than just an economic unit or a collection of statistics. Drift into the comfortable knowledge that cities need joy as much as jobs, need character as much as capital, need pickle festivals as much as Fortune 500 companies. Rest in the understanding that Pittsburgh has found room for all of it, has maintained its capacity for fun even through hard times, has kept its personality even as it transformed its economy. Sleep now with images of absurd sandwiches and endangered animals, and thousands of vintage bicycles floating through your mind, all of them part of Pittsburgh, all of them add in texture and detail and humanity to a city that refuses to be simple, refuses to be boring, refuses to be anything other than fully, completely, unmistakably itself. Black and gold. These are Pittsburgh's colors, the colors that unite the city across neighborhoods and backgrounds and differences, the colors that appear on all three of Pittsburgh's major sports teams, the colors that residents wear with pride, the colors that make Pittsburgh instantly recognizable. The Steelers wear black and gold, the Penguins wear black and gold, the Pirates wear black and gold. This uniformity is unusual in American sports. Most cities have teams with different color schemes, but Pittsburgh's teams all share the same palette, creating a visual unity that reinforces civic identity. The colors themselves come from Pittsburgh's coat of arms, adopted in 1816, which used gold and black to represent the golden grain fields and the coal and steel industries that would define the city's economy. What began as heraldic symbolism became sports tradition, became civic identity. Black and gold is Pittsburgh, so thoroughly that residents call it black and gold, rather than black and yellow, insisting on the terminology even when the actual actual color is clearly yellow. Wearing black and gold means something in Pittsburgh, signals belonging, expresses loyalty, connects you to millions of other people who claim these colors as their own. The Pittsburgh Steelers have won 6 Super Bowl championships: 1975, 1976, 1979, 1980, 2006, and 2009. 6 championships, the most of any team in NFL history for a long time, now tied with the New England Patriots, but still a remarkable achievement that spans decades and different eras of football. The Steelers of the 1970s were legendary. The steel curtain defense, Terry Bradshaw throwing to Lynn Swann and John Stallworth, Franco Harris running the ball, Chuck Noll coaching with understated brilliance. Those teams defined an era, won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, became synonymous with tough, physical, blue-collar football that matched Pittsburgh's self-image perfectly. Later championships came with different rosters and different styles, but the tradition persisted. The expectation of winning became part of the franchise identity, and Steelers fans across the country and around the world remained fiercely loyal, creating one of the largest and most passionate fan bases in professional sports. The Steelers matter to Pittsburgh in ways that transcend sports. They're a source of pride for a city that lost so much when the mills closed. A reminder that Pittsburgh still matters nationally, still wins, still has something to be proud of, even when the economy was struggling and the population was declining. The Pittsburgh Penguins have won 5 Stanley Cup championships: 1991, 1992, 2009, 2016, and 2017. The franchise has featured some of hockey's greatest players. Mario Lemieux, the elegant center who saved the franchise from bankruptcy by buying the team and then returning to play at an age when most players have long retired. Sidney Crosby, perhaps the best player of his generation, loyal to Pittsburgh through his entire career when he could have demanded trades to bigger markets or more glamorous cities. Evgeny Malkin, Jaromir Jagr in his earlier years, a succession of talented players who chose Pittsburgh or stayed in Pittsburgh and brought championships to a city that embraced hockey despite being better known for football. The Penguins' success came in waves: the early 90s dynasty, then a long drought, then a revival in the late 2000s and 2010s, with back-to-back championships that hadn't been achieved in nearly 2 decades. Hockey doesn't have the national cultural dominance of football in America, but in Pittsburgh it matters deeply. The Penguins creating their own devoted following, selling out games, generating the same civic pride that the Steelers do, proving that Pittsburgh could be a hockey city, even though it's not in Canada or Minnesota or the traditional hockey hotbeds. The Pittsburgh Pirates won 5 World Series championships: 1909, 1925, 1960, 1971, and 1979. Those championships are spread across baseball history, from the dead ball era through the modern game, featuring legendary players from different generations. Honus Wagner, one of the first great shortstops, led the 1909 team. Bill Mazeroski hit the walk-off home run in Game 7 of the 1960 World Series, one of the most famous moments in baseball history, the only Game 7 to end with a home run. Roberto Clemente, the Puerto Rican star who became a Pittsburgh icon, played on the 1960 and 1971 championship teams before dying in a plane crash while delivering aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua, cementing his status as not just a great player, but a humanitarian and hero. Willie Stargell led the 1979 We Are Family team, creating a clubhouse culture that brought together diverse personalities and talents. Pirates haven't won since 1979, have suffered through long stretches of losing, have frustrated fans with years of rebuilding that never quite produces results, but the history remains. The championships can't be taken away, and the hope persists that the Pirates will win again, will restore themselves to relevance, will give Pittsburgh another baseball championship to celebrate. The terrible towel, a simple yellow towel that became one of the most recognizable symbols in American sports. Myron Cope, the Steelers radio announcer, created the terrible towel in 1975, suggesting that fans wave yellow towels to support the team and intimidate opponents. The idea was immediately embraced. Fans bringing towels to games, waving them in unison, creating a visual spectacle that television cameras couldn't ignore. The terrible towel became tradition, then icon, then legend. Official terrible towels are sold, with proceeds benefiting a school for people with intellectual disabilities, the charity Cope designated when he created the towel. Fans bring terrible towels to games decades after Cope's death, wave them automatically when the Steelers' defense makes a big play, carry them to away games to show Steelers' pride in hostile territory. The towel has been to the top of Mount Everest, into space, across war zones with deployed military personnel who are Steelers fans. It's been waved in championship celebrations and at funerals, a symbol that transcends its simple physical form to represent loyalty, tradition, pride, connection to something larger than yourself. The terrible towel is Pittsburgh's totem, its most visible and widely recognized symbol, after maybe the bridges and the Heinz ketchup bottle. Pittsburgh calls itself the City of Champions, and the nickname is earned through sheer accumulation of championships across the major sports. 6 Steelers Super Bowls, 5 Penguins Stanley Cups, 5 Pirates World Series titles. That's 16 major professional sports championships, a remarkable total that few cities can match. The championships span generations, meaning that Pittsburgh has had sustained success rather than just one brief period of dominance. The teams win in different eras, with different players and coaches, creating a tradition of winning that becomes self-reinforcing. Young players want to come to Pittsburgh because winning matters here, because the fan base supports winners, because there's an expectation of excellence. The City of Champions nickname was particularly important during the post-industrial transition, when Pittsburgh was losing population and economic base and national relevance. The sports championships provided pride and identity when other sources of pride had disappeared, gave residents something to celebrate when so much else was being lost, connected Pittsburgh to the rest of America through televised games and national sports media coverage. Sports serve a particular function in Pittsburgh that may be more important here than in cities with more diversified sources of pride and identity. When you can't point to thriving industries or population growth or economic dynamism, you can point to championships. When national media writes Pittsburgh off as a dying Rust Belt city, you can respond by noting that the Steelers just won another Super Bowl, that the Penguins are Stanley Cup contenders, that Pittsburgh teams compete at the highest level, even if Pittsburgh Industries don't. Sports provide a shared language across the city's fragmented neighborhoods, a common cause that unites people who might otherwise have little in common. A Steelers game brings together people from Lawrenceville and Bloomfield and the North Side and the South Hills, people who might never interact otherwise, but who all wear black and gold, all cheer for the same team, all participate in the same rituals of fandom. Sports create community in a city that sometimes struggles with division and fragmentation, provide collective experiences in an era when shared experiences are increasingly rare. The relationship between Pittsburgh and its sports teams is deeply emotional, almost familial. Residents don't just watch the Steelers or Penguins or Pirates. They identify with them, take their successes and failures personally, feel genuine grief when beloved players retire or leave, feel genuine joy when championships are won. This emotional investment is intense in ways that can seem excessive to outsiders, but it makes perfect sense in Pittsburgh's context. The teams represent the city when the city needs representing, fight for the city when the city has lost other ways to compete, win for the city when the city has experienced so much loss. Every touchdown, every goal, every home run becomes more than just points in a game. They become validation, proof that Pittsburgh still matters, evidence that this city can still produce winners even when so much else has been taken away. The players who embrace Pittsburgh and stay loyal to the city become more than athletes. They become civic heroes, embodiments of what Pittsburgh values. Franco Harris, who spent his entire career with the Steelers and remained in Pittsburgh afterward, becoming a business owner and community figure. Mario Lemieux, who saved the Penguins franchise and gave back to the city through charitable work. Roberto Clemente, whose humanitarian work and tragic death turned him into a legend that transcends baseball. These players understood that playing for Pittsburgh meant something different than playing for other cities, meant carrying the hopes of a working-class city that had been beaten down but refused to quit, meant representing something larger than a franchise or a sport. The ones who understood this and embraced it are remembered and beloved in ways that statistics alone can't explain. And the fans, Pittsburgh sports fans, are known nationally for their passion, their loyalty, their willingness to travel to away games and fill opposing stadiums with black and gold. Steelers fans show up in huge numbers at away games, sometimes outnumbering the home team's fans, creating what feels like home field advantage even in hostile territory. This traveling fan base exists partly because so many people left Pittsburgh during the industrial decline, spreading across the country but maintaining their Pittsburgh identity, their sports loyalty unbroken by distance or time. Pittsburgh's diaspora stays connected to the city through sports, watches games wherever they are, raises their children to be Steelers or Penguins fans, maintains emotional ties to a place they may visit only occasionally, but never stop claiming as home. Sports become the vehicle for maintaining Pittsburgh identity, even when you no longer live in Pittsburgh, for passing that identity to new generations, for staying part of the city's story, even from hundreds or thousands of miles away. Let yourself rest now in the comfort of these championships, in the pride of black and gold, in the community created by shared loyalty to teams and traditions. Imagine terrible towels waving in unison. Thousands of fans united in support. The roar of the crowd when a play succeeds. The collective joy when championships are won. Feel the connection sports create between people who might otherwise be strangers. The way a jersey or a towel or team colors signal belonging, signal membership in something larger than yourself. Drift into sleep with images of championship banners hanging in stadiums, of players celebrated as heroes, of a city that found pride and identity and purpose through sports when other sources of pride had been taken away. Rest in the knowledge that Pittsburgh wins, that the city of champions lives up to its name, that these teams represent something deeper than games, something essential about a city's character and resilience and refusal to accept defeat. Downtown Pittsburgh has a cultural district, 14 blocks of theaters and galleries and performance venues concentrated in a walkable area where the arts are the primary purpose, where culture is the economic engine. This district was deliberately created in the 1970s and 80s as part of Pittsburgh's post-industrial transformation, a decision to invest in arts and culture as economic development to make Pittsburgh a destination for performances and exhibitions, to create cultural amenities that would attract and retain residents who had options to live elsewhere. The cultural district includes historic theaters restored to their original grandeur. The Bedtime Center, a ornate 1920s movie palace converted into a performing arts venue. The Byham Theater, another beautifully restored space. The August Wilson African American Cultural Center, honoring Pittsburgh's great playwright with a facility dedicated to African American arts and culture. Smaller venues like the Cabaret at Theater Square and the new Hazlitt Theater provide space for more intimate and experimental work. Gallery spaces show visual art. Restaurants and bars cater to theater crowds. The whole district activates at night when performances happen. People streaming from parking garages and transit stops, dressed for an evening out, creating an energy that transforms downtown into something alive and vital, rather than empty corporate towers after business hours end. Pittsburgh has a remarkable concentration of museums for a city its size, cultural institutions that preserve and present art, history, science, specific cultural heritages. We've mentioned some already. The Carnegie Museums of Natural History and Art, the Andy Warhol Museum, the Heinz History Center, but there are others. The Mattress Factory, an installation art museum that transforms industrial buildings into spaces for contemporary art that often can't be exhibited in traditional gallery settings. The Frick Art Museum, with a collection of Italian Renaissance and 18th century French art. The National Aviary, the only independent indoor nonprofit aviary in America, home to more than 500 birds from around the world. The Phipps Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, a Victorian glass house filled with plants from different climates and ecosystems, creating tropical environments and desert landscapes and seasonal flower shows. These institutions require sustained funding and community support, require cities to value culture enough to maintain it through economic ups and downs, require belief that museums and gardens matter not just for tourists, but for residents, for education, for quality of life, for the soul of the city. The Andy Warhol Museum is the largest museum in the United States dedicated to a single artist. 7 floors of Warhol's work spanning his entire career. Andy Warhol was born in Pittsburgh in 1928, grew up in the Oakland neighborhood, attended Carnegie Tech studying commercial art before moving to New York and becoming one of the most famous artists of the 20th century. Warhol's pop art, the Campbell soup cans, the Marilyn Monroe prints, the Brillo boxes, all the work that made him famous and influential was created after he left Pittsburgh. But the city claims him, celebrates him, built this massive museum to house his work and archive his materials. The museum contains paintings, drawings, prints, photographs, films, sculptures, archival materials, including Warhol's famous time capsules, where he would periodically box up everything on his desk and in his studio and seal it away. Visiting the Warhol Museum, you can trace the evolution of his style, see his commercial artwork alongside his fine art, watch his experimental films, understand the full scope of his output and influence. The museum anchors Pittsburgh's contemporary art scene, provides a major cultural attraction, and most importantly, it keeps Warhol connected to Pittsburgh, ensures that the city where he grew up can claim some association with his achievement, can say that this person who became globally famous started here in working-class Pittsburgh, the child of Slovak immigrants who went on to transform how art works in the modern world. Pittsburgh has a deep jazz and blues legacy that often gets overlooked in discussions of the city's culture. In the early and mid-20th century, Pittsburgh's Hill District was a thriving African-American neighborhood with a rich music scene, clubs where jazz and blues performers played, where Pittsburgh musicians developed their craft, where national touring artists would stop and perform. Pittsburgh produced significant jazz musicians. Art Blakey, the legendary drummer who led the Jazz Messengers, Earl Hines, the pioneering pianist, Billy Eckstine, who led an influential big band, Errol Garner, known for his distinctive piano style, George Benson, the guitarist and vocalist, Stanley Turrentine, the saxophonist. These musicians learned their craft in Pittsburgh, played in Pittsburgh clubs, absorbed influences from other musicians passing through, then took Pittsburgh's jazz tradition with them as they traveled and performed nationally. The Hill District's music scene declined as urban renewal destroyed much of the neighborhood in the 1950s and 60s, but the legacy remains, documented in August Wilson's plays, which often reference the music and culture of mid-century Black Pittsburgh, preserved in recordings, remembered by those who lived through that era and experienced the richness of Pittsburgh's jazz culture. In more recent decades, Pittsburgh has produced hip-hop artists who achieved national and international success, bringing Pittsburgh into contemporary music conversations. Wiz Khalifa, born Cameron Tomaz, grew up in Pittsburgh and explicitly represents the city in his music, references Pittsburgh neighborhoods and experiences, wears black and gold, has tattoos celebrating the city, maintains connection to Pittsburgh even after achieving fame. His breakthrough hit, Black and Yellow, became an unofficial anthem, celebrating Pittsburgh's colors and creating a song that Pittsburgh fans adopted for sports celebrations and civic pride. Mac Miller, born Malcolm McCormick, was another Pittsburgh rapper who built a devoted following before his tragic early death in 2018. Mac Miller's music was introspective, personal, different from commercial hip-hop in ways that felt authentically artistic rather than calculated for mainstream success. His death affected Pittsburgh deeply, prompting memorials and tributes, cementing his status as a local hero taken too soon. Both artists represented Pittsburgh nationally, brought the city into hip-hop discourse, showed that Pittsburgh could produce culturally relevant music, even though it wasn't a traditional hip-hop center like New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta. Pittsburgh has become an increasingly popular location for film and television production. Studios and production companies discovering that Pittsburgh offers diverse locations, interesting architecture, 4 distinct seasons, and financial incentives that make filming here economically attractive. Films set in Pittsburgh or using Pittsburgh locations include The Silence of the Lambs, Night of the Living Dead, shot just outside Pittsburgh, The Dark Knight Rises, which used Pittsburgh locations for Gotham City, Abduction, Jack Reacher, Fences, adapted from August Wilson's play and filmed in Pittsburgh, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and many others. Television shows have filmed here too, using Pittsburgh's varied neighborhoods and landscapes to stand in for other cities or to tell Pittsburgh-specific stories. The film industry presence brings jobs for local crew members, opportunities for local actors, economic activity from production spending, and visibility for Pittsburgh locations when films are released. It's another example of Pittsburgh's post-industrial economy, using the city's physical resources, its buildings and bridges and landscapes, as assets in a creative industry rather than manufacturing context. These cultural resources, the theaters and museums and music legacies and film industry presence, they add up to something significant, something that distinguishes Pittsburgh from other post-industrial cities that lost their economic base and never developed strong cultural alternatives. Culture alone can't replace steel mills economically, can't employ the same numbers of people at comparable wages, can't generate the same kind of broad-based prosperity. But culture does things that industry can't do. It enriches daily life, provides meaning and beauty and connection, gives people reasons to stay beyond economic calculation, attracts creative people who have choices about where to live, creates a city identity that's deeper and more interesting than just economic statistics. Pittsburgh's investment in culture, its maintenance of museums and theaters and arts venues through economic hard times, its celebration of artists like Warhol and musicians like Blakey and playwrights like August Wilson. All of this creates cultural capital that matters in ways that may not show up in GDP figures, but that fundamentally affects whether a city feels alive or dead, whether it offers residents full lives or just employment and housing. The cultural district at night filled with people attending performances, the Warhol Museum rooms with their bright silk screens, the memory of jazz clubs where musicians created new sounds, the contemporary hip-hop artists claiming Pittsburgh in their lyrics, the film crews setting up shots on Pittsburgh streets. These are all versions of creativity, all ways that Pittsburgh participates in culture rather than just consuming it. All evidence that the city generates art and music and performance and not just economic output. A city that produces Andy Warhol and August Wilson and Art Blakey and Wiz Khalifa is a city with cultural depth, with creative energy, with a capacity to contribute to broader human culture in ways that transcend its local boundaries. Let your thoughts drift now through these cultural spaces, through theater lobbies and museum galleries, through jazz clubs remembered in hip-hop lyrics celebrating Pittsburgh, through film sets capturing the city's distinctive architecture, Imagine the curtain rising on a stage, the lights dimming, an audience settling in to watch a performance. Picture silk-screened portraits in bright colors hanging on museum walls. Hear the sound of a saxophone late at night in a club that no longer exists, but that lives in memory and in recordings. Feel the pride of hearing your city mentioned in a song that becomes a hit. Watch a movie and recognize the street corner, the bridge, the building that marks it as unmistakably Pittsburgh. Rest in the knowledge that culture matters, that cities need art and music and performance and creativity as much as they need jobs and industries. That Pittsburgh has cultivated cultural resources that give the city depth and meaning and connection to the broader human project of making beauty and meaning out of the raw materials of experience. This is Pittsburgh, a city of 3 rivers and many bridges, of steep hills and long stairways, of steel mills closed and universities thriving, of neighborhoods that maintain distinct identities, of sports championships and cultural institutions, of immigrant traditions and contemporary innovation, of loss and transformation and persistence, of black and gold pride and quiet resilience, a city that has been many things and will be many more things, that refuses to be simple or summarized or reduced to a single story. Pittsburgh, complicated and contradictory and endlessly interesting, the city that built America and then had to rebuild itself, the city that survived its own death and became something new while honoring what came before. Let the story of Pittsburgh settle over you now, like snow falling on the 3 rivers, gentle and persistent, covering everything, transforming the landscape while the fundamental geography remains. Drift into sleep with Pittsburgh in your mind. All 90 neighborhoods and 16 championships and countless bridges and millions of stories, all of it part of one city, one place, one continuing story of human beings trying to build something worthy of the landscape they inherited, the rivers that brought them together, the hills that made them work for everything, the industries that rose and fell, the culture that endures, the pride that persists, the city that refuses to quit, the city that is always Pittsburgh, always black and gold, always 3 rivers meeting, always home to someone, always worth knowing, always worth remembering, always Pittsburgh, always